gonna come as a shock. But
there's so many secrets and dishonesty.
it's stupid.
Mariah, what the hell?
They look like the perfect American family. 9, later 10, blonde, blue-eyed children in matching homemade clothes, a mother who called herself a doctor, a father who ran a family farm in rural Georgia like it was the last outpost of a world untouched by television, technology, or temptation. For millions of viewers who tuned into TLC's Welcome to Plathville starting in November of 2019, the Plath family was a curiosity, a real-life throwback to a time before smartphones, before Netflix, before Coca-Cola was allowed in the house. But what audiences did not know, what almost nobody outside that farmhouse in Cairo, Georgia understood at the time, was that the wholesome image being broadcast into American living rooms was sitting on top of a fault line that had been cracking for years. A marriage that looked unbreakable would end. A golden boy son would walk away from his own mother for the better part of 2 years. A daughter would confess, on camera, to infidelity that shattered a relationship in front of millions. A wedding meant to be the happiest day of a young woman's life would instead become the moment the family's dysfunction finally became impossible to hide. And through it all, one question kept forming in the minds of the people who watched, season after season, year after year. Was the strict, godly household we saw in season 1 ever really what it claimed to be? Or was there a secret sitting underneath the surface the entire time, waiting for the right moment to blow the whole thing apart? Stay with us, because by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly how a homeschool farm family in rural Georgia became one of the most talked about, most dissected, and most emotionally complicated stories in modern reality television, and why the fallout is still unfolding right now in 2026, in ways nobody saw coming when the cameras first started rolling. Do you understand why the Plath family's story has captivated American audiences for more than 6 years now? You have to go back before the cameras, before TLC, before anyone outside of a small, tight-knit religious community in rural Georgia had ever heard the name Plath at all. Kim and Barry Plath built their lives around a set of deeply conservative Christian values, raising what would eventually become 10 children on a farm in Cairo, in the southeastern corner of the state, in a household defined by structure, homeschooling, and a level of separation from mainstream American culture that most viewers, even those from religious backgrounds themselves, found almost impossible to imagine. There was no television. There was no processed sugar. There was no dating in the conventional sense. Courtship, when it happened at all, was closely supervised. Music, movies, and even certain kinds of play were restricted according to a worldview the parents believed would protect their children from the corrupting influence of modern life. According to extensive reporting on the family's background, that worldview was substantially shaped by their connections to the Institute in Basic Life Principles, commonly known as IBLP, the same fundamentalist organization whose teachings and influence have been examined in other high-profile reality television contexts involving large religious families. It is important to be precise here. The Plath family has not been the subject of the same criminal allegations that rocked other IBLP-adjacent families in unrelated cases, and nothing in this video should be understood as equating the Plaths with the criminal conduct of any other individual or family. But according to reporting on the show, including comments attributed to daughter Lydia Plath, IBLP-style teachings were a real and formative part of the environment in which all of the older Plath children were raised, and understanding that context is essential to understanding almost everything that happened once the cameras started rolling. When Welcome to Plathville premiered on TLC in November of 2019, the show's premise was simple on its surface: introduce America to a large camera ready, visually striking homeschool family, and let viewers watch as the household navigated everyday life. But the show's actual engine, the thing that made it a genuine hit rather than a forgettable curiosity, was something much more universal than farm life or homeschooling curricula. It was the tension between two of the Plath's oldest children, Ethan, the eldest son featured on the show, and his wife Olivia, and Ethan's parents, Kim and Barry. Ethan and Olivia had married roughly 6 months before the show's first season began airing, and their marriage immediately became the vehicle through which viewers watched the walls of the Plath family's isolation start to come down. Olivia, who had also been raised in a religious household but with considerably more openness than Ethan's upbringing, introduced her new husband to things his parents had never allowed. His first professional basketball game, his first trip to a movie theater, television shows most Americans grew up watching without a second thought, and yes, famously, his very first can of Coca-Cola. Small as some of these moments might sound out of context, they represented something much larger to longtime viewers. A young man discovering, piece by piece, that the boundaries he had been taught to see as moral absolutes were, in fact, choices his parents had made, choices that were not universal, not necessarily permanent, and not something he was required to accept simply because he had inherited them. That tension, between the freedom Ethan and Olivia wanted for their own household and the disapproval radiating from Kim and Barry, did not stay contained to season 1. It metastasized. Over the course of the show's run, viewers watched Olivia describe feeling isolated, judged, and at times outright rejected by her mother-in-law, while Kim, for her part, expressed her own hurt and confusion at watching her oldest son build a life that increasingly excluded her. What started as disagreements over sugar and screen time evolved into something with much higher stakes. An estrangement between Ethan and his parents that reportedly stretched for close to 2 years, a rift so serious that, according to reporting on the show, there was a scene in which Ethan said goodbye to his siblings without Olivia present, leaving his mother and sisters in tears. This is the emotional architecture that Welcome to Plathville was built on from the very beginning. Not villains and heroes in any simple sense, but a family in the middle of the single hardest thing any family can go through. Watching children grow into adults who no longer accept everything they were taught, and then having to decide in real time on camera whether love is going to win out over control, or whether pride and hurt feelings are going to calcify into something much more permanent. It is also worth understanding, before we go any further, that the Plath family's story includes profound loss that predates the show and continues to inform how the family relates to each other. Kim and Barry lost a son, Joshua, who died at 17 months old. The show has addressed this loss directly, including an episode built around what would have been Joshua's 15th birthday, and it is a piece of the family's history that longtime viewers understand as foundational to why Kim, in particular, has been described across multiple seasons as someone who holds on tightly, sometimes too tightly, according to critics of her parenting style, to the children she still has. Understanding that grief does not excuse every conflict that followed, but responsible reporting on this family requires acknowledging it, because it is very likely part of why the stakes in every single one of the family's disputes have felt so much higher than ordinary family disagreements over the years. By the time the show reached its 4th and 5th seasons, the Plath family's story had grown considerably more complicated than the original premise of strict parents, freedom-seeking newlyweds. Kim and Barry, the same parents who had spent years enforcing an extraordinarily conservative worldview on their children, announced in June of 2022 that they were ending their 24-year marriage. In a joint statement provided to Us Weekly at the time, the couple said that after considerable thought and discussion, they had decided the divorce was the best choice for both of them, adding that they had been through many highs and lows over the course of their marriage and intended to co-parent their children moving forward. For a family whose entire public identity had been built around religious conviction and traditional values, this was a seismic development. And for the older children who had spent years being told that the very freedoms they wanted, the same freedoms Ethan and Olivia had introduced into their own household, were incompatible with a godly, stable family life. The divorce raised uncomfortable and very public questions about consistency. Ethan himself addressed this directly in confessional interviews during the show, expressing what he described as a pang of resentment when he saw things that, in his words, didn't add up with his mother's decision to divorce despite the values she had spent years instilling in her children. He went further, suggesting that the environment he was raised in had, in effect, prepared none of the Plath children for an alternative way of building a relationship, and that watching his own parents fail to adhere to the standards they had preached for so many years left him frustrated in a way that was difficult to fully articulate. This, ultimately, is why Welcome to Plathville matters as more than just another reality show about an unusual family. It functions for a huge swath of its American audience as a real-time case study in generational change, religious upbringing, and the messy, often painful process of adult children renegotiating their relationships with parents whose worldview shaped every decision of their childhood. Some viewers watch because they recognize pieces of their own upbringing in Kim and Barry's household. Others watch because they are fascinated by the specifics of the IBLP-adjacent lifestyle. And a great many watch simply because the show, whatever its origins, has become genuinely compelling, character-driven television, a slow-burn family drama with real stakes, real heartbreak, and, as you're about to see, a level of ongoing conflict that shows no signs of resolving quietly anytime soon. Now let's walk through the actual timeline, because the story of this family did not happen in one single dramatic reveal. It happened in waves, season after season, each one peeling back. Another layer of a household that looked far more complicated up close than it ever did from a distance. The first major fracture, as we've discussed, was the estrangement between Ethan and Olivia on one side and Kim and Barry on the other. That rift reportedly lasted for most of the show's early seasons, with Ethan eventually agreeing to meet with his father and older siblings without his mother present as a first step toward reconciliation. According to reporting on the show, Ethan and Barry were able to set their differences aside enough for Ethan to be present and supportive during his parents' difficult transition into divorce, and that reconciliation with his father reportedly gave Ethan the confidence to finally confront his mother directly, laying out years of accumulated grievances in an emotional, widely discussed scene. Olivia, notably, did not experience the same reconciliation. According to multiple entertainment outlets covering the show, Olivia continued to feel used and unvalued in her relationship with Kim even after Ethan's own relationship with his mother began to heal, a dynamic that placed enormous strain on Ethan and Olivia's marriage from the inside, since Ethan was rebuilding a relationship with people his own wife did not trust or feel safe around. That strain, according to extensive reporting across multiple entertainment outlets, is widely understood to be one of the central factors that eventually led to Ethan and Olivia's divorce, which became public in 2024. Olivia had reportedly boyfriend. That underlying family tension escalated dramatically in the summer of 2025 when, during the July 29th episode of the show, Veronica made an on-camera allegation that would define the season. She stated directly that Micah had cheated on her, in her words, several times, and that she had spent a significant period of time lying to protect him and denying what she knew to be true out of fear that the truth coming out would hurt him. She described putting her own pride aside and defending him publicly even while privately carrying the knowledge of his infidelity, and the episode ended with Veronica in tears while Micah remained silent beside her, a moment that TLC itself confirmed to us weekly would be addressed further in the following week's episode, where Micah would share his own side of the story. That follow-up came in the August 5th, 2025 episode, when Micah confirmed the substance of Veronica's allegations in a confessional interview with producers. According to his own on-camera admission, during a period of long-distance dating while he was living in Los Angeles, he continued pursuing other relationships even after telling Veronica he had stopped. He described keeping the door open with multiple other women and continuing to meet up with them, acknowledging that while Veronica had never forced him into the relationship or the move, he had not been mature enough at the time to handle the commitment he had made. Veronica, in her own account, added a detail that made the situation considerably more painful. She said Micah had been unfaithful during trips to New York specifically, and that she ultimately learned the full truth not from Micah himself but from a direct phone call made by the other woman involved. Adding another layer to an already complicated situation, in October of 2024, Mariah Plath's former boyfriend Matthew Craven publicly alleged that Micah had been unfaithful to Veronica on a far larger scale, claiming, without providing verified evidence, that he had screenshots documenting infidelity occurring more than 50 times and suggesting Veronica seek STD testing as a result. It's essential to flag clearly for viewers that Craven's specific numerical claim has not been independently verified and should be treated as an unconfirmed allegation rather than a proven fact. But it undeniably added fuel to an already blazing storyline, and it is part of the public record of how this controversy unfolded. The relationship between Micah and Veronica did not survive the fallout. According to reporting, tensions boiled over into physical conflict by the end of season 7, when Micah and his brother Isaac were involved in an altercation connected to ongoing friction between Veronica and the wider Plath family, reportedly occurring around the time of Lydia Plath's wedding. Shortly after, the relationship ended for good. When season 8 premiered on March 31, 2026, Micah confirmed he had moved on, telling viewers that after the breakup he knew he needed to make a change in his life, and revealing that he had a new girlfriend, someone he was keeping notably private, declining to share her name or identity publicly while he focused on reflecting on the mistakes of his past relationship. According to fan community discussion tracked by entertainment outlets covering the show, that decision to keep his new relationship out of the public eye has itself become a talking point, given that this is a family whose entire brand, for years, has been built around broadcasting even the most painful and private moments of their romantic lives to a national television audience. But if you thought the Micah and Veronica storyline was the most explosive material season 8 had to offer, the show's producers had something else waiting in the premiere, a direct, public reckoning between Lydia Plath and nearly her entire family. Lydia had married Zach Wise, and according to extensive reporting on the lead-up to their wedding, several members of the Plath family, including Kim, Micah, and Ethan, behaved in ways described by entertainment outlets as unsupportive and, at times, outright disrespectful toward Zach before, during, and after the ceremony. Specific incidents reported include Ethan starting a fire at the location where Zach had planned to propose to Lydia, and Micah throwing a chair into water near the proposal site and nearly knocking Zach down while roughhousing on a nearby hill, behavior that, regardless of intent, cast a shadow over what should have been one of the most significant moments of Lydia and Zach's relationship. In the season 8 premiere, which aired April 1, 2026, Lydia confronted her family directly and emotionally, gathering multiple family members together to hold them accountable for how they had treated her husband, making clear that changing her last name did not change who she remained related to, and that she expected the family to do better going forward. Entertainment outlets covering the confrontation described it as an unusually direct and public airing of grievances, even by the standards of a show that has never shied away from family conflict, and noted that Lydia, who has often been characterized in coverage as the more conflict-avoidant sibling, appeared to have reached a breaking point after months of watching her husband treated poorly by the people she loved most. Layered on top of all of this is the financial picture that has emerged around the family since the show's success. According to entertainment outlets tracking the family's finances, Kim and Barry's combined net worth is now estimated at around $3 million. A dramatic transformation for a family that spent years living an intentionally modest, off-grid adjacent lifestyle before television cameras arrived. Mariah Plath's individual net worth has been estimated in a considerably wide range, reportedly between $1 million and $5 million, driven in part by her pursuit of a music career. Ethan and Olivia, even amid their divorce, were reported to have a combined net worth of roughly $500,000, with Ethan's post-divorce life reportedly centered around restoring old cars. These numbers. On the legal side, one detail that has drawn scrutiny across entertainment coverage involves Kim Plath's professional identity. Kim has been shown on the program referring to herself as a doctor, and reporting confirms she does hold credentials as a naturopathic practitioner, someone trained in the use of natural remedies such as herbs to address ailments. However, multiple outlets covering the show have been explicit that Kim is not licensed to use the title doctor in the conventional medical sense, and that doing so raises legitimate questions about consumer understanding, particularly for a public figure with a substantial platform and an audience that may not immediately grasp the distinction between a naturopathic practitioner and a licensed medical doctor. This is not a claim that Kim has broken any specific law. Professional titling rules vary by state and by context, but it is a detail that responsible reporting on this family has consistently flagged as worth understanding clearly, because titles carry weight, and audiences deserve to know exactly what expertise is and is not being represented when health-related guidance is offered on a nationally broadcast program. There is no confirmed reporting of active lawsuits, custody battles, or criminal proceedings currently involving the core adult Plath family members discussed in this video, and it would be irresponsible to suggest otherwise. What we do have, confirmed through direct statements and on-air admissions, are 2 divorces, Kim and Barry's marital divorce, finalized after their 2022 announcement, and Ethan and Olivia's divorce, which became public in 2024, both of which carry their own